We are?
Yes,
Sorry,
we're
I
ready.
had sound issues on my end, but we are.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's 6:33 on Thursday, August 5th, 2021. This meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded for storage and viewing on our district website. The public can participate during the hearing and individuals and delegates by signing up via live audio public speaks via WebEx on the form on our website or by submitting a written statement using the BOE questions form also available on our website. Adequate written notice of this meeting of the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education has been sent to both townships and village clerks, the Star Ledger, the News Record, tapintosoma.net, and thevillagegreen.com. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Gosho, please note for the record that no board members gave advance notice they would not be able to attend this meeting. And with that, may you please call the roll.
Good evening, everyone. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Board Member Susan Bergen. Here. Shannon Cuttle. Here. Board Member Thayer Joshua.
Here.
Board Member Anne Marie Manny.
Here.
Board Member Alyssa Malaspina.
Here.
Board Member Chris Sabin.
Here.
Board Member Erin Siders.
Here.
Board Member Courtney Winkfield.
Here.
Board Member Johanna Wright.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. The school board meeting is a business meeting in public, not a meeting with the public. Oftentimes, it may appear to members of our audience that the Board of Education takes action with very little comment, and in many cases, a unanimous vote. Oops, sorry, I lost mine. Okay. Before a matter is placed on the agenda at a public meeting, the administration has thoroughly reviewed the matter with the superintendent. If the superintendent is satisfied that the matter is ready to be presented to the Board of Education, it is then referred to the appropriate board committee. The members of the board committee work with the administration and the superintendent to ensure that members fully understand the matter. After the committee discusses the matter, it is then shared with other board members for consideration, and only then is it placed on the agenda for board action and discussion in a public meeting. We are now at the time for our first public speaks, known as hearings of individuals and delegates. Before we do that, I'd like to make a motion that we hold this meeting remotely. Have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Siders. All in favor?
Aye. Yes.
That appears to be unanimous, Mr. Garcia. We are now at the first public speaks, also known as hearing of individuals and delegates. This is an opportunity for you to share your concerns about an item on the agenda, but not time for dialogue with the board. Board requests that you state your name and town of your residence for the record. We will set the time to 3 minutes for each speaker, and we ask that you respect that time limit. We must cut you off so it does not appear as if we are giving anyone an advantage to share their views over another individual. Speakers have the full protection of free speech during public speaks. However, this form does not protect you from the subject of your free speech pursuing libel or slander charges. And finally, the board recommends that all members of our community pursue the chain of command. Okay, Ms. Bonds, I'm looking at what I have here. I do not see any audio comments, so I'll move on to written submissions. And okay, we have one here. This is from Elizabeth Rohan in Maplewood. Set the timer. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, this is again Elizabeth Rohan in Maplewood. Having read the emails of board members that were published in the Village Green, I would like to express my disgust at the conduct of people who were elected to serve the needs of children in our community. Thanks to board member Johanna Wright for her clear-headed rebuke of this disgusting conduct. You do not need a law degree or a PhD to have foreseen with 100% certainty that the board president's refusal to allow the one problematic police resolution to be severed from a series of resolutions that included one expressing support for transgender students was going to force some board members to vote against the transgender student support resolution against their will, and that some community members would then seize this opportunity to attack those board members with false claims that they do not support transgender students. That is not good governance or good leadership. For some board members to attack the only Asian American board member with claims of racism and a failure to respect for leadership because she rightly questioned the president's failure to follow Robert's Rules of Order, this conduct was appalling. For those board members who said these emails showed your values as board members should not include this nastiness, vitriol, and a lack of respect for your fellow volunteers and community members who are elected to serve homeless children and taxpayers. I am sorry this petty political squabbling is how this dysfunctional board conducts itself, and that smart, talented board members need to resign to escape this toxic HIB behavior. I think it's clear that most BOE members should not be reelected due to their inability to conduct themselves with integrity in their role as public servants. And that was Elizabeth Rohan of Maplewood. And that concludes our first public speaks. So now we are at the we're now at the retreat portion of our meeting. I'd like to make a motion to take a brief 5-minute recess to allow us to go over to the Google Meet for that portion of the retreat. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Malaspina. All in favor?
Aye.
That appears to be unanimous, Mr. Gershio. Okay, the board is now in recess and we'll see you shortly on the Google Meet. Thank you.
Board Member Shannon Tuttle.
Here.
Board Member Thayer Joshua.
Here.
Board Member Anne Marie Manny.
Here.
Board Member Alyssa Malaspina. Board Member Chris Sabin.
Here.
Chris, we're getting some feedback on your end. Are you on? Okay.
Board Member Aaron Siders.
Here.
Board Member Courtney Winkfield.
Here.
Board Member Johanna Wright.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good evening again, everybody. And thanks again for meeting on relatively short notice to continue, I guess, which is really part 2 of the retreat. Ms. Peterson and I sat down after the first one, over some emails and thought about what was the best way to incorporate some of what we heard at our last retreat, and the exercise that I shared with you earlier this week regarding things we should keep, stop, and start is something that Ms. Peterson has been doing in other districts when they have been meeting in person. Obviously, we're virtual this evening, but we still think that the format can work very well. And with that, I'm going to first thank Ms. Peterson and Mr. Penny for joining us once again. Really appreciate the time that they are giving to us this evening. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Peterson.
Great, thank you very much. And I guess I also wanted to thank the board for the time that you are putting in and the commitment that you're making, to continue to advance the work of your board. Like it was said, that this is part 2 of the retreat, that in the first part of the retreat, we spent the time reviewing the board's self-evaluation, the outcomes of it, and we all shared our thoughts and impressions about that, and kind of gave us a flavor, I guess, for where we are now. And I feel like that it was important for the board to have that conversation, and that by the end of the conversation, we identified that it would be important for us then to take those next steps then of using that information to help us move forward. So Ray, I'm going to turn it over and see if you have anything that you wanted to add as well before we get started in the work here.
I don't really have too much to add. I think you went through a normal process of sometimes when you have to start to rehash and storm a little bit, and then you have to move forward. And that's kind of a normal process that all groups have to go through. And I think if you're all passionate about your district, and I think if you start to move forward, it won't be easy though, but I think you need to take that first step. And I was going to be here for about an hour. I didn't get this notice until fairly late. So, but Charlene is the best, so I'm not too worried.
Okay, well, again, so we want to thank everyone, and want this to be similar to last time, a conversation, and it's important that we hear from everyone, hear what's important to everyone. So we'll use the similar format we did last time of kind of being recognized by the chair and giving everyone then an opportunity who would like to speak. Having said that, it was mentioned that we did have a grid or a format put together of how we'd like to talk about this, and kind of breaking it into 2 really kind of big buckets of meeting effectiveness and then also governance team effectiveness, and recognize that the conversation needs to come from a place of, not looking at individuals, not looking at individual board members, but looking at from the place of, you are one team. You succeed on this team, you accomplish things based on the strength of this team. So all of our conversations should be focused on your board team. So as we talk about things that the board does well, the board needs to change, the focus needs to be on the board. So recognizing that, if everyone's okay with that, we'll just go ahead then and get started and kind of walk through those steps. So again, we were talking about meeting effectiveness, and then we'll talk about governance team effectiveness, and talk about it through the lens of kind of three different ways of how we do things. So starting with keep. So first we'll look at, what do you do well already as a board team? And I guess we'll start with meeting effectiveness. In meeting effectiveness, and you should keep doing it. What are some things that you do well? Then once we finish with that, then we'll talk about stop and saying, what is the board team doing now that gets in the way of its effectiveness? And so we should stop doing it. And then the last part will be start. So then recognizing then that if we've identified things we need to stop doing, there also should be things then that we need to start doing in each of these areas to enhance our effectiveness. So having said that, but again, like I said, start with meeting effectiveness. So would like to open it up to the board to identify those things that you think that as the board team, that it does well and that you should keep doing. So we'll open it up to the group.
Thank you. I will bring back out the Excel moderator or name generator, if you will. And first is Board Member Malspina. And I'm sorry, before you start, I just want to clarify, Charlie, we're only talking about things we should keep doing for meeting effectiveness. That one box. Okay.
Okay. I would say that I like that we have moved towards now having the policies not being bundled. And I would like to see that continued moving forward.
Okay, next, Board Member Siders.
Hi. I was thinking that we do a good job of preparing for our meetings with a strong agenda, and we do our best to start our meetings on time.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Wright.
I love the fact that we're cutting down on time and we're not staying until the midnight hour, because I can't call on Wilson Pickett because he's gone someplace. But I like that we're trying to slim down and sort of do things a little more quickly rather than being here after midnight. Because my mind does not operate well after a certain hour. But I appreciate that.
Thank you. Board Member Sabin.
Yeah, I would, I appreciate from on the outside now being on the inside, the efficiencies of these meetings right here. And I'm looking forward to that moving or transferring back to when everybody's allowed to be back as around the table.
Thank you. Next. Board Member Bergen.
Thanks. I agree with Board Member Siders about the agenda setting being done well and the meetings being set up in a way that makes sense and the presentations being useful. I also wanted to add the committee report outs I find are very useful as someone who's new to the board and hasn't served on all the different committees to hear what's happening each month in the different committees. And that our executive sessions are running well, I think.
Sorry, thank you. Let me just get back here. Board Member Wingfield.
I agree. sort of the streamlined board meetings as of late have been running much smoother. And I think that there's a few key structures that have been in place, like sort of limiting the length of some of the presentations and also limiting some of our questions to one or two key questions has made that run smoother.
Thank you. Board Member Manning?
So following up on Susan's point about the committee readouts, I also think it was critical that we moved those readouts before we voted on things. Prior years, it was after we voted on the agenda. And then the other piece that I think we've done quite well is highlight not only student voice during our meeting and during our committee meetings, but also trying to highlight the accomplishments of our students during our meetings, and hopefully we can get back to some musical presentations as well.
Board Member Connell?
I echo Board Member Manning's comments about I like how we have reimagined looking at how we support our student representative and add student voices to our meetings, especially since I've been on the board, and leading them to be more a part of not just our meeting, but in our committees. That's new structure for us. And I look forward to us continuing that. The other thing that I think that we do well is the thoughtfulness in our agenda setting meeting and our committee setting meetings in order to make sure that information is relayed and extended out to our fellow colleagues in those committee meeting sessions for discussion, and then for our full board agenda setting for discussion, and how that is aligned with also more components and presentations coming from the district to get information out to the community.
All right. There's not much for me to add. I think everyone has touched on what I was going to say, so I will just stop there. Charlene, what do you want to do next? Do you want to comment here? Do we go down to I guess that last question, which was about how we can commit to something, or just what's the next step for us?
So I think the how we'll commit to something will be kind of the wrap up last piece of it. So I think we'll just keep moving through the grid, and just wanted to thank everyone for the positive way we're starting this out. And it was really great to hear the good things that are happening at your meetings. So now let's continue to know that we have some areas of agreement of ways that we do things well. So now let's continue to move forward and see how we can grow. So let's move to the next part then of saying, what should we stop doing? What are some things that are happening that are getting in the way of our effectiveness? To allow our meetings to be more effective.
Okay. All right. Board Member Siders.
So what I wrote down was what gets in the way is our behavior in our meetings, our inability to disagree with grace, and inability to accept no, and inability to provide constructive criticism without resorting to name calling.
All right, thank you. Remember Bergen.
Thanks. I think we've gotten better with this, but the Robert's Rules of Order and all of us being comfortable with sort of the process of the board meetings is something that's tripped us up a little bit. And I also was going to say, there are times when we disagree, and that's to be expected. And I feel like we sort of just go back and forth in circles, and at some point we have to learn how to agree to disagree about things and have a process for when we close a discussion, if that's where, if that's where it's heading.
Thank you. Board Member Manning.
So one thing that's a positive and a negative is when there is someone expresses a concern about something, it is usually pulled back and brought back to committee, and those issues are discussed. But those same board members who had the original issue still continue to bring up a particular point of view that was not represented in those committee meetings, and continue to push as if we haven't given the topic due consideration. I think the fact that there is continuous leaking of confidential materials and conversations, the perpetuation of misconceptions, and taking people's words out of context and generating a narrative that supports a particular point of view, I think is destructive and not worthy of our public.
Sorry, thank you. Board Member Malspina.
I would say that our biggest issue, we have a few issues. One being that we need to follow Robert's Rules of Orders correctly. We have to, and including in that is we need to stop this idea that we vote on multiple different topics at one time. And the bundling of information, because what is happening is there are times when we're voting on many, many different topics that don't really relate together or go together, but they are being put together for us to vote on. And so it's either you have to vote no for everything or you have to vote yes for everything. There cannot be not allowance of severing at times, which has gotten us into which has led to what was discussed at the just now at the public speaks area of the meeting, is something that we must address. I would say the bullying behavior by certain members of the board needs to stop, and the also the continued accusatory nature without any proof or any ability to back up it with facts. I don't know how we move forward when we keep accusing each other of things without being able to provide any facts to back them up. So I would say that that is a good portion of the problems that I can see right now.
Thank you. Board Member Connell.
I defer at this time.
I'm trying to do this in a random order, so do you have any comments at this time?
That is my comment.
All right. All right, next will be me. So just give me a second here. If you can't tell, I'm sorry for the typing you may have been hearing. I'm trying to be on and off with the mute button, but I'm taking notes as we go through this so that when we're all said and done, we can use these comments to sort of frame potential revisions to our board goals in the hopes of passing them in August, and if not, the latest September. So that's what I've been doing as I've been listening to everyone speak. For me, the one thing I've heard some of the things that I wrote that I have on this sheet. So one I haven't heard yet is in bringing up concerns on agenda items, either relatively close to meeting time and or without going through the proper channels. And I do think it's reasonable to have questions about agenda items, but we should all, and I've tried to stress this in recent communications, is to work through the chair, work through the board members and or the administration to get those questions resolved ahead of the meeting, so that you have a general understanding of what's being presented for us to vote on. That's all I have that wasn't already mentioned. All right, Board Member Wingfield.
Something I brought up last time is I think that oftentimes we struggle in that our dissent is often not communicated in a way that feels particularly productive or solution oriented. I think to that point, some of us really struggle to use language that's low inference and precise when we are giving feedback around things. And I think that it's often used to be very hyperbolic and incite. And I think that it's not productive and it's definitely not helpful in us moving forward on an issue or either interpersonally as a board.
Board Member Saban.
Yeah, it sounds like, and what I've observed is communication. And it would sound so simple, but as I'm saying that out loud, I haven't spoke one-on-one conversations or the board as a whole finding time to reach out and talk to each other as individuals. And then things actually change. You actually hear something, a nuance from the person who you disagreed with on 2 or 3 or 4 other things, but you find something that you can agree and bring back to each other as a group. And there was a person who spoke to me about being on a board years ago, and it was the little things that make a difference. And I think that that's something. So right now, I will say that I have 2, 3, maybe 4 of the board member, 5 of the board members' phone numbers. And I think that we should just it should just be inherent that everybody wants to communicate and talk to one another, as opposed to talking to each other when we're told to talk to one another. We should really try to find out what the other person is feeling, thinking, and understand that person's point of view. Because it's not, when people are saying things and trying to provoke, that's not what I want. What I'm listening, I'm really trying to hear what is bothering, so we can all figure out this is where we can go together. So it's not just a problem. I think we have to come up with a solution.
Thank you. And lastly, Board Member Wright.
Board Member Wright, you were muted.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to find a mute button. Hang on. 2 seconds.
You're good now. You're good.
Okay, so, the bottom line is this, I would like to see a board that acts without impunity, because we act with impunity here. I would also like to see us basically abide by the laws and do a little bit more training. Our objective here, today is very important. This retreat, I look at as a turning point for the board. We need to have direction that is clear. We need direction that is ethical. And I think that will put us back on the right track. I'm also really, really concerned about how we have voted. I think that Ms. Malaspina hit a chord with me with the votes that we've done in bundles. And I would like to see a revote in those areas, because there is no way that some of those things that I was basically forced to vote for that I agree with, but it was important enough for me to vote no for some things that were critical, that I thought was critical. And so I would like to see a revote for that, because it was done illegally and we need to straighten that out. So we need to begin to straighten out the things that are broken and fix it. And I would like to see that done at the next meeting. And I can tell you about those resolutions, all of those that we voted, where things have been bundled with certain issues that people wanted people to vote for. Unfortunately, that did not happen. And so I want us to obey the laws. I would like to see us have open finance and facilities meetings where somehow this board think that we should not. I think people, taxpayers need to know where their money is going. I shouldn't have to ask every week or every month that we're having a meeting to have it open, but yet we're having a committee of the whole with curriculum and instruction. We're presenting draft budgets to the community, so I'm concerned about these things. And I pay a lot in my taxes, and I'm paying a lot for failure.
Thank you. Ms. Peterson, my understanding is that we are trying to stay on the track here and not get off track by, addressing individual comments and questions as they come up. So if that's all right with you, I'd like to just move on to the next piece, which is what we should start doing.
So, point of order, board president.
Ms. Manning.
Ms. Peterson and Mr. Penny, what does the board do when someone accuses us of breaking the law and having illegal action? When every single meeting we have is with a lawyer in the room, and we refer to this expertise of the superintendent and we ask questions of our lawyer at every single board meeting.
Again, I understand the concern raised. I do want us to stay focused. Maybe that's something that Ms. Peterson and Mr. Penny can address later this evening. I saw that they were taking notes, but I do want us to stay focused and get through these 6 grids before we move forward, because I don't want us to get derailed, and I want us to stay on track. So I appreciate the comment. Thank you, Board Member Manny. And I would ask Ms. Peterson and Mr. Penny to address that later on this evening. Thank you. As we move to the next next question, which was something we should start doing to enhance meeting effectiveness. Board Member Cottle.
I'm sorry, there's a lot of noise going on in the house right now. I need to defer.
Okay, next will be me. Alrighty. So I think the couple things that I wrote down is I think we should establish an SLA, some sort of timeline that we all agree upon for responding to emails or questions about agenda items, meeting schedules, attendance, etc. Things that impact our ability to function at a board meeting. So if I'm trying to schedule a meeting, for instance, like scheduling this retreat, making sure that we can get, particularly when they're relatively tight timelines, making sure that everyone does understand or have an agreement that if there isn't a response by, X, whatever that is, I have 72 hours in my head, but we can sort of discuss that. But I think we should have an SLA for responding to emails to each other, and particularly, and with questions about, agenda items, meeting schedules, and, the ability to attend a meeting, whether it's virtual or in person, as we start, this hybrid world. So that's what I have. And Board Member Cottle, whatever you can comment on this, just raise a hand and I'll come back to you. I understand the situation. Board Member Wakefield.
I think that we need to start consistently coming to meetings prepared, having read the materials, preparing questions, and when we're engaging in discussion to stay focused on the topic, and to keep both our comments and our questions precise and low inference in nature.
Thank you. Board Member Manning.
So one thing I think we need to really stick to the annual agenda and constantly reference that, as well as support Dr. Taylor in some of the suggestions on how to communicate progress against goals to the board as well as the community. And then I think we need to get an overview from Charlene as far as what is our role during the superintendent's presentations to the board and the community. Very often we are not just asking clarifying questions, we're actually, opining or requesting additional information, which is not my understanding from talking to Charlene is not the purpose of that discussion time. So I would just like to follow up on that.
Thank you. Board Member Saban.
Yep. I say moving forward, and I think it's happened in the as I'm hearing, but being focused and focused at meetings and focused before, being disciplined to understand that this is business, and this is about communicating the business of managing and running helping run the school system, and just being respectful of one another. So if we could follow that, I think we're moving to a place of that's good.
Thank you. Board Member Malaspina.
I think we need to do a much better job communicating. It is very top down, and it is not collaborative in nature, and it makes it so that we are finding out information at the last minute or right before it is going out to the public. So I think that this not only relates to the board, but with administration in general, to run our meetings better. Presentations and other stuff should be given to us in advance, so we don't have to be asking those questions, like Ms. Manny said, during the meetings, because we would have a time in advance to see them. But when we're seeing them for the first time in a meeting, it makes it really hard for that to occur. So, getting presentations in advance, getting information in a timely manner, but also being collaborative in the process. So instead of it just being told to us that it is, and dictated, it should be done in a manner that is allowing us to have input into what we'd like to see in the agenda, or input into how things should be, instead of it being all top down given to us. And that goes for not only board meetings, but committee meetings.
Board Member Wright.
So are we talking, what can we do to contribute to the work of the team in each of these areas?
Not yet. We're doing the one above that. What does our board team need to start doing in these areas to enhance meeting effectiveness?
Listen, first of all, we can be a little kinder, right? That doesn't hurt at all. We can begin to look at people for face value rather than what you've heard before you arrived on the scene and what you think you see, and look at everyone's expertise, where it lies, and what gifts they bring to the board, because each of us bring different gifts. And it all depends on how you look at those gifts and how you bring those gifts together. I have said a long time that if we start trying to be a team, things will work. But, you know, unfortunately, that whole teammanship, a team personship or teamship, is just not in place. It's not conducive right now, because I think that people are really, really angry about what, but we ought to get angry about how the district is being run at this point. We need to be angry about our children and not being safe. There are a lot of things we need to be angry about as versus to being angry with one another. So let's throw all of those things, and we want to find out who's leaking here and who's leaking there. Let's put that energy into children. I think that would do us all a service, a real service. And just be kinder. Laugh a little.
Thank you. Board Member Bergen.
Oh, thanks. I guess I wanted to agree with what board members Winfield and Saban said about staying focused at the meetings and on agenda. And I feel like these retreats with the random name generator and everyone having one chance to speak things have been moving well with those. And I don't know if that's something we would want to experiment with at a regular board meeting.
Thank you. And last, Board Member Siders.
The one item that I have, I think other board members have mentioned as well, is around Robert's rules. And I think we could all use some training in Robert's rules. And I know that the last 2 years, the Governance 101 training has been virtual. It hasn't been the same as it was previously when it was, I think it was like a day and a half or 2 full days. And it would be great if NJSBA included Robert's rules in that training. I don't know if they do it today, but I think it will be helpful for us all.
Okay, thank you. So now I believe, Ms. Pearson, we want to go to governance, please. Okay, so we'll start with, we'll go back to the top. What we should keep doing in the area. Sorry, Board Member Cuddle, do you want to comment? You have your bit.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the deferring. Lots of things happening. So, you know, the lots of things have already been said, but I did want to, you know, agree with staying focused on the agenda, board function, role, and duty. And also, you know, having a better understanding, and I think we all could use a refresher on Robert's rules. Those are all great points, as well as the point of giving each other grace. We are, you know, to the point of where we are a team, as Ms. Peterson has said. The board functions as a team, as a whole, that comes from different backgrounds and experiences, but collectively together, we're tasked with moving the district forward with the primary function of students first. And that should always be our first kind of, you know, prime directive that drives us in all that that we do. And I would also say one of the things for us to start doing is, additionally to give grace and kindness, is to have better effective communication, listening communication. You know, I believe wholeheartedly we're all here passionately in our duty and purpose with the best intentions, but collectively how we interact and respond with each other amongst ourselves on this format and in public matters. It's not just on the WebEx screen, but also trickles down through our community all the way down to our students, and that what we expect from ourselves is what we should expect from our students and how that's represented in the community. So that's for consideration for us as we move forward together.
Thanks, Board Member Cotto. All right, we'll now move on to governance in terms of the team. So what can we as a board keep doing? So we'll start with that first one. And we'll start with Board Member Wright.
What can we keep doing, President Joshua?
Yes, that's the question.
Well, first of all, we can keep putting one foot in front of the other and showing up. And if there's something that we don't do sometimes with people and human nature, and I'm not talking about the board, it's like showing up. And I think we need to stand up instead of standing by. And that's basically it. This format is kind of foreboding for me. I don't know. Well, that's it.
Board Member Sabin?
I like some of the things that have been said already, not necessarily about this, but I like how things are, I see there's a progression, but I think we need to just try, as to what I heard, this is right state, but try in a sense of everybody going with understanding Robert's rules, everybody trying to communicate with one another, and everybody working together, and just making a mental note to reach out to one another. I mean, I'm going to say that again, but if I talk to you only once a month, and I'm not talking about the top, I'm just talking in general, then I don't know how people, and it's not about how one person votes, it's about a group. And we can influence each other throughout the month or throughout the year to hear and do good things for, as all of us have said, we're here for the students. And there are things that everybody brings to this table that are very valuable. And if we don't hear it, and we only hear it one time, 5 minutes before, that's not going to benefit anybody. So everybody should really make an effort to reach out and communicate with one another. And that's not one way, that's a two-way street.
Thank you. Board Member Cotto.
I am in agreement with Board Member Sabin about reaching out. As far as governance, that's a model I deeply believe in, making sure that there's outreach, making sure that things and resources are shared. So I echo that. And a sense of togetherness. For governance, we are different individuals, but we are one governing body. And that we come from different opinions and perspectives and experiences that contribute to the process, but we all contribute what our skill sets are, our talents, our passion. We find the solution. And so from a governance model, that's the team atmosphere that Board Member Wright speaks to, that we could amplify and lift up from a governance perspective.
Thank you. Board Member Manning.
So are we still talking about things that we are currently doing that we want to continue? I'm sorry, I got lost.
We are talking about what we should keep doing, yes, in terms of board governance generally, or
right.
Team effectiveness, I think.
Sure.
Governance team effectiveness.
So I think we have to celebrate the work that Aaron, Board Member Siders started, and Board Member Bergen has continued with the policy review work. The dedication of keeping everyone in the loop as far as the policy work that is currently up for first read, second read, the conversations in the policy committee, I think, is something that we should continue. I know I myself have a hard time sticking to the Strauss-Esme guidelines and language. So I do hope that we continue to modify language so that it truly protects our children first, but sticking with not trying to rewrite every single policy because we will never get done.
Thank you. Next was me, and I don't have much that hasn't been said already. So in the name of efficiency, I'm going to move on. Next will be spin around, Board Member Bergen.
I think same as you, everything I was going to say has already been said, so I can pass for now.
Board Member Wakefield.
I've really appreciated and hope that we keep sort of strong system of distributive leadership that exists on the board, whether it's communication from our board president about what's coming up, what to expect and how to prepare, or from, at least in my case, the two respective committee chairs that I've worked most closely with, where I've had really clear communication previewing what I'm to expect and or to contribute in an upcoming committee meeting. So I think the model of distributive leadership has really supported my ability to show up and stay focused on outcomes.
Thank you. Board Member Siders.
I think we all take our roles seriously and that we're efficient in the governance around policy evaluations and goal setting, and that's something we should continue.
Thank you. And lastly, Board Member Massimino.
I don't really have much to add other than the fact that Mr. Saban, I had already at the last board meeting invited everybody for a drink to my house. I think you missed that part of the meeting, but I am still extending that invitation to you for us to, get together and drink. And, because I do feel like we need to do something like that, find a way to communicate outside in a less formal setting, and it does, and not about, exactly the board type of stuff, in a way that is nice. But I also caution the fact that discussions shouldn't, if it's board discussions, I believe that those discussions should be had in a public setting or in a email type setting where it is appropriate and transparent, and not done via text messages or phone calls or stuff like that, where it is not as transparent of a nature. And so, because I believe that we need to be as transparent as possible in that, and that's where I'm at. But I do agree with basically what others have said.
Thank you. We'll now move on to things that we should stop doing that's getting in the way of governance and team effectiveness. And we will start with Board Member Manny. Board Member Manny?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just trying to think about, I think some of the same things that we talked about as far as governance carries over to this bucket as well. I do think we have to think about, what is on this agenda and what is being bundled as the consent agenda or the general, what we're being asked to vote on, what is hindering the work of the district and what is worthy of deeper discussion. I come at it from a slightly different point of view because we didn't always have a superintendent that shared 95% of the agenda with us, 96%, whatever, as Dr. Taylor does. So maybe have a lower threshold. I don't know, but I also think that there are some things that are just standard and within the purview of superintendent's management of the district versus necessarily something that the board should be concerned about.
Thank you. Next is Board Member Board Member Melsvita.
I'd like to sort of, I think, a lot of the stuff has already been said, but I'd like to circle back to what Ms. Wright stated about looking at, I don't know if Mr. Penny or Ms. Peterson can give us some guidance either now or later on as to what happens if we were forced to vote on multiple items and we would like to go back now and sort of revote because the community feels that wrongfully so that we do not believe in one of the policies, but since they were bundled together with other policies, etc., that we are now being maligned in the public, and to the point of the fact that I actually was attacked in my at my own house by a member of the public because of a misunderstanding of viewpoints. So I think I would like to know, Ms. Peterson, Mr. Penny, is there a way we can revisit some votes or we can go back and change things? It's not that we were not allowed to sever an item, and so that led to a whole big hullabaloo. So, which is then reverberated further on and into the community. So I'm just wondering if there's something that can be done about that. And I don't know if you can address that now or later.
Like, as we said, to stay focused on what we're on this particular exercise. That's a question that can be addressed later. I guess before we move, I'll address it later. So let's just stay focused. Board Member Siders.
My comment is more of a process comment about the board does not speak with one voice. I feel like we have multiple voices that get, or opinions that get communicated to the superintendent, but they're not, they're comments that don't go through the executive committee of the board in a way that I guess stresses to the superintendent and leadership that this is an item that the board as a whole is interested in. I like to see less of people, making statements directly to the superintendent, bypassing executive committee, because how are we directing what our priorities are and what the superintendent should be focusing on if different people are coming with their opinion of what should be addressed. We need to have one voice. And then the other item that someone else brought up is this board's inability to keep things confidential. in particular what occurred this past weekend with emails being sent to the press outside of the Oprah parameters. And, you know, I believe that's an ethics violation, but, you know, not 100% sure, but it definitely was, it was inappropriate.
Thank you, Board Member Wright.
I got lost in Ms. Snyder's comments. What was the question again?
What should we stop doing that gets in the way of governance and team effectiveness?
I think what we can do is we can begin to solicit input from everybody to have more collaboration. I will give examples, but I give those examples with us. But there should absolutely be more collaboration in terms of where we're going and what we're doing as a board together to at least know before things are just thrown and say, this is what we're doing, and everything is like a shock. So I think that would be helpful to run things by, you know, whether it's the executive board or sending something to the members. It's important.
Thank you, Board Member Winkfield.
I have a couple of different sort of threads of thought. I think one of them is it's definitely hard to build trust and to engage in real transparent collaboration if there is a constant sort of fear based on past examples of our communications being leaked. It's really hard to engage in that way. And I think that really hinders our ability to engage one another in a transparent way. I think that we need to strike a better balance more consistently across the board between a respect for the elected leaders or the chosen leaders, whether it's our board president or our superintendent, and strike a better balance of certainly pushing and holding those folks accountable, but also engaging with them with a degree of respect. And then finally, I think that as a board, we need to engage in some training ourselves. It's definitely concerning to me that as a board and as a district, we have some pretty ambitious goals around equity when our own, at least collective equity literacy seems pretty low at times, and our ability to engage one another in really critical and respectful feedback conversations about issues of race and equity are often interpreted with a degree of fragility that I think we need to push through.
Thank you. The next one is me, and you know, I don't have much to add other than, you know, the one thing I wrote down is just keeping confidential information confidential, which multiple people have said. So I'm going to now move on. Next is Board Member Bergen.
Thank you. I think that we have a lack of responsiveness often to communications about the board's work that I find when I send out emails about policy things, for example. And I think that we all, there's certain things about this job that we all are really passionate about and work that we love to do, but there's also a lot of other work that we all need to do together. And I think that sometimes it feels like we're, you know, the interest in some of that work is not that intense, and we don't get a lot of feedback and, you know, people wanting to engage on all the whole range of things that we need to do together.
Thank you. Board Member Sabin.
Yeah, I've heard, and I agree, but that we need multiple. One, I think we need multiple voices to be heard, and on the other sense, I do not believe that we need one voice coming from the board. But I do believe that everybody needs to be heard. But when there is something has been decided upon, we need to move forward in the best way forward to make that a reality. So it's not based on what has happened in the past. It is based on what is going on right now, that if we can all listen and communicate with each other, then we find a way, and as I mentioned at the last retreat, find that one thing that we can all work towards and move and find a way to move forward. And that one thing can be a number of things, unfortunately. But we have to do that and build from there.
Thank you. And Board Member Cottle.
Again, a lot has already been shared, and I've been taking notes of everybody's comments. But one of the things I think we would benefit from, coming from perspective that we truly, and I've said this already, and I'll say it again, that I truly believe that we are all here in volunteer service with the passion and commitment and good stewardship of our district in support of our students, which is our prime directive. And when we have other things that steer us off that path, we do a disservice not just to ourselves, but to the community and our students, and to stay focused on that prime directive and in our responsiveness to each other, at the same time being able to offer effective communication, open communication, and be willing to be able to have participate in not just this process and our committees and our duties as a board member, but participate as a board, bringing your whole self to the table at all times, and how effective that would be. I said this before, and I'm going to say it again, because knowing that we all have pieces of the puzzle that we can only find solutions when we come together as a whole. And as Board Member Saban just said, everybody's voice is important to be heard, but once there is a collective vote that happens, that that in of itself is our duty as a board, in our efforts to putting students first. So I say that again because I really feel passionate about this, the fact that I truly, honestly believe that every single one of us here and my Brady Bunch WebEx are here with passion and purpose, and with the prime directive of putting our students first. And I'm hopeful and I believe in that. And if we realign and retune ourselves to that perspective, is something that I would like us to see to do more of, as well as a lot of the other, things that were mentioned. I have one other thing, which is, I think if we I said this before, but if we have better grace with each other, and assuming not the worst, but assuming best intentions whenever possible, it leads to be able for better cohesion for us to come together. But we have to have that openness and understanding to do that, and not be closed, but be open. And I think that's really important, and I'd like to see us do more of.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the last of the 6 boxes. Well, I guess not the last, but the last of the 3, the Keep Start. So this is the start for governance team effectiveness. Again, so the question is, what do we need to start doing to enhance our governance team effectiveness? And first step is Board Member Wright.
Well, I guess, I'm the longest serving board member here. I think that the things that I can do to contribute to the work of the team in all of these areas is to continue doing the things that I have been doing, giving you the best that I've got, as Anita Baker said, in terms of my expertise when it comes to the classroom, curriculum, and things of that nature, to continue to try and build some type of teammanship, but also to be fervent in telling the truth. The truth is very, very important. And it's so much easier for people to believe a lie than the truth. So we can all stand up and be truthful about what's going on and how it's going on and what's happening. And to continue to put children first. They're not second, third, they are first, and we need to act like it because we don't.
Thank you. Up next is Board Member Malaspina.
I would agree with what Ms. Wright said, that we need to start making sure that the children's voice is heard. And I'd like to hear not just the children's voice in the high school area, but also, you know, we don't hear from the younger grades. And I would love to find a way that we could, I don't know, highlight them too, because their voices deserve to be heard also, not just the high school students in our district. So if there was some way that we could do that, I think that that would be great also. But I also think we need to be truthful with ourselves and with the community and as transparent as possible, and continue on that path. And to move forward and not continually be trying to, just moving forward. We need to move forward.
Thank you. The next person is me. So I think what I wrote here was, and I heard this earlier, you know, refreshing and reminding ourselves about the annual agenda, in remembering that our role as board members is to ensure that the district is well run versus actually trying to run, you know, everyday operations of the school district. I think we all need to remember that. And also, I've heard this in other parts, but I think here is you know, respect the will of the board. And when a vote is after a vote occurs, even if you may disagree with that decision, that's something we all, I think that's part of our core governance and ethics rules. So I think we all need to remember that. Board Member Bergen.
So in terms of enhancing our governance effectiveness, I think the board's role in policy setting is really critical, and our policy manual is very outdated, and board member Siders and I have been trying hard to work through a long list of outdated policies, but I think that it would be helpful if we all felt invested in that work, the different committees that have responsibility for different sections of that manual, having a role in identifying and prioritizing what policies need to be brought forward and helping to move them along. So it's not sort of like an afterthought, but it's, you know, an integral part of the process in each committee.
Thank you. Board Member Cottle.
So I agree with Board Member Bergen, and policy is so critical. It's our main function, and all of us being engaged and invested in making sure that the policy moves forward in guidance of the district. I think that's absolutely critical, as well as setting our goals as a foundational point for us to work through and from in a cadence with the district. And I also do agree with, you know, understanding the role of the board versus our function and duty is to make sure it's well run versus running the district, and finding our doors and windows to offer suggestions and input following through either chains of command or other forms of directed communication, to share resources and information or insight or comments to help move the process forward, and not be a stoppage to that process.
Thank you. Board Member Saban. Board Member Saban? All right, maybe having technical issues. Board Member Manning.
So following up on Susan's, Board Member Bergen's point about the policy manual and taking ownership of updating the policy, I also think to get us on track for governance, we also have to look at all of our monitoring across those policies. Many policies already have written in the types of reporting out to the board that we need. Some of it's in the annual agenda, but some of it is just regular reporting, and we should have a feel for which policies are being implemented well and what needs to be monitored, and then how do we adjust the policy based on the outcomes.
Thank you, Board Member Manning. So, sorry, Board Member Saban.
Keep moving forward. What everybody has said so far is, I am in agreement. We definitely need this moving. But please move forward.
Thank you. Board Member Siders.
Just to continue receiving training on school board ethics and on the role of a board member. I think those are two areas that just can't be reinforced enough for us.
Thank you. And lastly, Board Member Wingfield.
I don't have anything else to add. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Mr. Penny, Ms. Peterson.
I guess so ideally we would have done this in small groups, and each group kind of would have talked about, we would have split you in half, and one group would have talked about, one of the topics and then kind of switch sheets. So, I apologize for the format of us having to do it this way, but I think it's important for everyone to, be heard and for us to understand what everyone said. And I hope everyone, felt the same way I do, that there is a lot of commonality in the direction that the board feels that it needs to go to come together. So what I would like to kind of recommend is, to take one more step, and I would consider this to kind of be our data or kind of our input of things that we would like to do. And then to take this information, and I don't know if you want to, again, go into groups or, at another time, or how to do this, but to kind of develop a code of governance best practices. Boards are now saying, okay, we recognize that we have committed to a code of ethics, but we are going to hold ourselves to a higher standard than that. And that these are the things that as a group we have identified that we are going to commit ourselves to doing, and the way that we are going to conduct ourselves and the way that we are going to treat one another. So I would like to have kind of the next step be to take the information that we have heard here tonight and put that into a document, kind of code of governance best practices that the group would agree upon. And then usually then groups reaffirm it every year, make sure that it is still, represents what's important to the group. And then I think that there were also some action items that were identified here in terms of, different training opportunities. And again, we talked about kind of communication protocols, policy distribution. So also then to separate out what are some actionable items that the board can hold itself accountable to taking these items and, developing some kind of an action plan to move forward with. So almost see, like I said, those two steps of taking the things we've committed and put them into a code of governance best practice, and then identifying action items that the board can hold itself accountable to moving forward with. So would kind of leave that to the group to see if that is everyone's in agreement that that would be a good way to move forward with this information.
Yeah, I think we do have a governance document that we have, we've affirmed, at least I think it's last 2 years, 2 or 3 years. I know it's been the 2 years I've been on the board. I don't know if it started the year before that, but we do have one that we all, not just voted on, but we all signed it after we voted on it in DocuSign. So we all, not just the code of ethics, which is, a legal requirement for boards of education, but we also have taken that step in terms of holding ourselves to our own, code of governance, which, as you said, Ms. Peterson, is above and beyond what's just required of us as school board members. So, as I said earlier, one of the things I've been doing is taking notes from all these and trying to put them together into a revision of the board goals that we've set for this year, to include some of the things that we've heard here. I anticipate sending that out in the next couple of days. But either an email or maybe a link to a Google document where folks can add comments or questions and try to get it into a format that is, digestible, that we can then put forth, ideally in August, but if not in August, in our September general meeting. So I don't know if everyone's okay with that. I don't know if Ms. Venus, if you want to share your notes with me in advance to the extent that will help us make sure that we've covered a wide swath, if you will. And so if everyone's comfortable with that, then we can move to, I guess, the bottom, which is the last two questions. And let me know how you would like to proceed in that area, Ms. Peterson.
I think that we can just leave it open of, anyone saying, and I think we can kind of combine the two and just say, based on, the conversation that you've heard here tonight and the things that the board has acknowledged is important to the board in terms of work that it needs to do to move forward, of identifying if there's things that you can do as an individual to help contribute toward that work.
Charlene, I was going to be leaving, but I did want to make a couple of comments because I think there was a lot of commonality, and the word that started coming up towards the end is, well, it's been said before as the meeting went on. And I know the board member Wright said it in the beginning, and I saw some head shaking at that, is that they like the meetings that were shorter. So I don't want to drag this on that much longer because we all like shorter meetings because brevity is better. So that should be one of your goals. But also I think Board Member Wright and Board Member Cuttle were saying, using a different word for the same thing. Board Member Cuttle was using the word grace, and Board Member Wright was using the word kindness with each other. And I think that's important as you move forward, is how you show respect for each other. But there are things that also I heard, and it's not new to anyone. Some people say it was bullying. Sometimes not the reason. It's hard to agree to how to disagree, and that's probably the crux of it. But I think if you work with Charlene a little bit more on creating those meetings more effectively, you can find a way to agree to disagree. And if you can do that, you can move forward much easier. So. Oh, and
thank you.
There was also a question asked. I think I would defer on the votes to the board attorney on that. I'm not sure how you would. I haven't had that one asked before, but moving forward, you should deal with that issue too. But I would defer to your board attorney on that. I don't know, Charlene, unless you had, because that's pretty much a legal question.
Ms. Peterson, I don't know if you were going to comment, I can tell.
No, I am in agreement with what he said. I mean, it's also part of Robert's rules too, is that if the board wants to go back and revisit something that it's already voted on, that there's conditions like, if action's already been taken, on that item that you voted on, you can't go back because you've already, action's already been taken. So again, it's part of Robert's rules, but, more importantly, it would be under the guidance of your board attorney. So between the two, that would, kind of help guide that direction and that for that particular question.
Okay, I know there was another question that came up, or although two questions. Well, we talked, I guess the second one we just came up with, but there was one more question. Did you want to address that now before we go into the last part of this exercise? Or did you want to hold that until the end?
I would say right now it would seem like this would be the opportunity for the group to ask questions, and then maybe the end of what you can do might be kind of the closing exercise.
Sure. All right, so the first question was about, I guess, but some allegations of illegality, and what, does the board have any recourse in that area?
So again, I think that was part of what Mr. Pinney was referring to, is obviously that's why you have, a board attorney, and that is the person that, the board depends on for its, advice in that area and for helping the board, conduct itself in a legal way. Our kind of, New Jersey School Boards has a legal department, an attorney of the day, and our advice always is that, much of this is subject to interpretation. And so that is where you as the board rely on your board attorney to assist in that interpretation of the situation that is before you. So, that's, kind of, we each have our own areas. I would say that obviously the legal proceedings of the meeting would be the under the guise of the board attorney.
Thank you. Any other questions before we go to the last part of the exercise for this evening?
I did have a question.
Go ahead, board member Wright.
Ms. Peterson, I had talked about in the last retreat about our board interacting with boards that are doing really, really well, and I told you I've watched several board meetings from some of the top districts. Is that possible? Because what I'm looking for here are answers, not objectives, but answers. And I really don't feel that I'm coming out with any concrete answers in terms of where we're going and where we're headed and how we function. And it's, I don't know, it's just not, something's just not sitting right with me in terms of where we're going. Everything was organized. It was just so everybody be nice and everybody be polite. But we have some serious issues here with this board. And I don't see how we're really digging down. We all know how one another feel, but what are we doing to make things right? What are we doing to move on? Like I said, objectives can be oblique, but we need answers. We need some answers.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Hughes.
No, I was just going to say, I think that, the answers are in the agreement of what the group, what the consensus that the group is going to agree to move forward with. And I think that those answers are going to come kind of in the next piece of this, of looking at the code of governance best practices that you have as a group, and looking at where it needs to be changed or, perhaps updated based on this conversation. And then the answers will also come in the actionable items and any goals that come out of this as what are the action steps then that we need to take. So right now, I think that we have identified the information, and then like you said, this isn't the final piece. Then the next piece is how we can update that document based on this information, and then what actionable items are we going to move forward with. And it's, the answers are going to be the work that needs to take place to keep moving forward. So, kind of saying what what work is that? What do we need to do? What do we need to do as a group? What do we need to do individually? And we're not going to be able to fix it or change it all at once. So if we can identify some steps that we can do better or differently, and then revisit that a couple months from now and say, okay, we did those things well. Now what can we add on to that? Then what can we add on to that, to the point that these things then become part of your board culture and the part of saying that this is the way our board does things around here. You know, you mentioned those high performing boards and board meetings you see when they do things well. It's a result of hard work, and it's a result of a commitment to move forward in a way that everyone agrees is the way your board needs to do. You know, I've been going through these board self-evaluations now, and this summer is when it tends to happen a lot. And I've had like 2 or 3 boards that 2 or 3 years ago, their board self-evaluations were terrible, and they, were not working together as a team. And all of a sudden, as I'm looking at this year's and saying, like, what happened? You are saying great things you're saying how much you enjoy working on this board. I just had a board the other night tell me how far they've come and how much they enjoy working together. So you as a group need to take those steps and take that time and have, it sounds like there's the willingness to do it. Now we have to put in the work to do it.
Thank you, Board Member Manny.
So if a lot of the disgruntlement is over one policy in the public's perception, like, can we just add that for first read and second read again, or second read again? I don't, if this is what all this is about, like, I mean, we have changed our process for naming each of the policies, but, we can just put the transgender policy back on for approval on our agenda, right?
I don't see a problem with that. I believe we can, so.
You'd be able to do
That's
that.
going to be my question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Butler.
Board Member Malasmina?
Ms. Manny, I thank you for that suggestion. And that would be something that I would hope we could possibly move forward with, especially because of the misperceptions out there and the attacks that have occurred. But I would suggest we hold our students and our staff to the idea of restorative justice and doing restorative justice circles. And I would suggest that we as a board move in that manner and do something like that. I think that that could be very beneficial to us to do something, to practice what we are preaching to our students and to move forward by doing a restorative justice type of session. Because I think that that could be really helpful for everybody, especially since that is something that, we have really are pushing with our students and our staff.
Thanks. Actually, I think that's a pretty good idea, Board Member Malasmina. That's something we should consider. I've written it down. Any other questions before we get to the last part of the exercise for this evening? All right, so we will break out our good buddy Excel one more time. And so we're gonna do both questions, right? What I can do for both meeting and for meeting effectiveness and governance effectiveness. And we will start with Board Member Manny.
So I think meeting effectiveness, I can support using point of order and bringing us, trying to keep us focused. I also will overcome my personal the personal harm of my 2 years as president, where I was routinely, screamed at, for lack of a better word, and also, let go of some of that hurt and try to move forward.
Thank you. Up next is me. So I have here that what I can do for meeting effectiveness is, I think, just taking taking what I heard this evening and putting things together in a way that if it to make it a board goal or one or two board goals that would work in that area. This is, we've heard about Robert's rules, establishing an SLA for feedback, so things like that. I've already said that that's why I'm taking these notes this evening, and I'll put them together in a document that I will share with the board in the next couple of days. And in terms of our governance team effectiveness, I think I can continue to remind everyone of our duty to maintain confidentiality while doing the work on the board. Forwarding reminders about NGSBA training sessions. I know I see them, me may see them in our emails, but maybe that extra nudge might get more participation or just more awareness that they're out there, and that if they fit in your schedules to partake in those. I think that's something I can do, that will help us all be at least aware of some of the trainings that we've talked about wanting to participate in this evening. Next, Board Member Bergen.
Thanks. For the meeting effectiveness, I think I would like to become more familiar with Robert's rules and comfortable using them, and how to do that to help keep the meeting on agenda and on point. And in terms of governance effectiveness, I think I see my role as trying to help us get on top of the policy manual. And not only that, but also trying to figure out procedures that will help future boards keep from getting in the position that we're in now, to stay on top of things as they come out each month.
Thank you, Board Member Bergen. Board Member Cottle.
So similar would be for meeting effectiveness would be to help using Robert's rules to keep us on task and keep us uniformed in a timely manner, and better support of our overall meeting function, goals, and purpose. And as far as how that aligns with the governance perspective, to continue to be able to be supportive in that regard, and share resources and information with all board members, and help try to ensure that there is information sharing and connectiveness and uplifting questions, comments, and concerns in a timely manner when they're uplifted following protocols.
Thank you. Next is Board Member Wright.
In terms of effectiveness, I can only go back. I remember one of the first meetings that I attended as a new board member in Atlantic City, which, by the way, is like the most awesome weekends ever. I even let Chris Saban hang out with me a couple of times. And you had a good time too, didn't you? But I think
may I cut in and say, I think it goes both ways.
Yes, yes.
Conduit of a good time. Thank you. But keep going.
But they talked about, and you guys have heard me say this many times, a duty of care and our fiduciary responsibility. And so when you're talking about the effectiveness of boards or of anything, you want to care about it and you want to be fiscally responsible. And so that's all I'll say. That's all I have to say about that. Duty of care.
Thank you. Board Member Wakefield.
I will commit to ensuring that I show up to meetings, whether board meetings or committee meetings, prepared, and will commit to using the appropriate tools at our disposal, as Board Member Manny said, like point of order, to ensure that we stay focused and targeted on the conversation.
Thank you. Board Member Malaspina.
I would like to also join Board Member Bergen in commitment to something we had discussed the other night in our policy meeting, as to working towards finding a way to make it so that when we are changing policies or we are doing something, that we are keeping track of it and we are keeping it organized so that everybody sort of knows why we made changes and who is involved in it and all of that, so that moving forward, when there's turnover and stuff like that, there is something to look back on and it's not reinventing the wheel. So I am committed to working with Board Member Bergen and Board Member Siders to make sure that that occurs, because I think we've come along. I have to give Board Member Siders and Bergen credit. They have done a lot to try to organize it as much as possible, but we still have a ways to go in trying to make it better. So, I'm offering my library skill, my librarian skills and my organizational skills to help make that possible. And then I am committed to us getting together for doing something that is fun and outside of the meetings, and that we can get together and have some fun outside. So I'm still pushing and committed to working towards having that happen in some way, shape, or form.
Lord have mercy. Can somebody say they're going to go to her house and have a drink?
These people, somebody drink with me.
I don't drink, and I don't want to go to your house.
Oh, that hurts, Miss Wright. Miss Wright, that hurts.
I'm going to say point of order. That may I jump in?
You're actually our next board member.
And I was going to say, I think I might be actually next. That I would enjoy getting together and having if everybody would commit after one of the next board meetings or meetings that we're having, either the 16th or the 23rd, because what I was thinking, one, to have an effective meeting, we have to be planned. And in order to plan, we have to communicate with each other before the meeting so that everybody can be on a page together. So if that means that we, with this random conversation or this tool that you're using here, randomly select 3 people that we have to talk to and make sure that we communicate about the issues or things that are going on, to make sure that this meeting is going to move along. And then we randomly pick a place. I'm not saying no if Board Member Malaspina, if you can't leave your house, then I am happy, but I would recommend that we go someplace that everybody, because I would like this to be for the community as well.
So I can leave my house. I'm just going to say to you personally, on a personal level, I might not be at the 16th meeting because I'm moving my son into college that day. So I'm going to say after the 16th. So
then we can push it out to the 23rd.
I'm fine with the 23rd, but this next week, as all of you guys know who have had kids that are going to college, which some of you do, it's like
It's a big
the
day.
insane week. So I will need to drink after that because, you know, I'll be a empty nester. So so no, I am fully committed to trying to work that with you, Mr. Saban, to make
I
that happen.
like that idea.
And I can leave the house. I am now well enough to walk and move in a better manner.
Happy to hear. Thank you. And lastly, board member Siders.
Sorry, couldn't get off mute. For meeting effectiveness, as others have said, show up to meetings on time and prepare. But I'm also I'm committed to having more one-on-one conversations with board members. In terms of the governance, I think I will continue to share resources that I find that I think would be beneficial to board members. A couple months ago, I shared a negotiations training module that I found on the NJSBA website. So I will continue, if I see something, I will continue to send that on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I believe Ms. Peterson, I think we're done unless you have closing remarks and words for us before we carry on back to the WebEx to finish this evening's meeting.
I just wanted to close just to say thank you. I, again, appreciate the commitment that all of you are making, appreciate the group willing to take this time to do this work and, and look forward to seeing it continue and look forward to see how your board will grow and, advance together. So I'm looking forward to seeing a different board self-evaluation next year, right? That reflects some of this work and the growth that the board is committing to. So.
Thank you. Thank you again for your time and commitment in helping us work through this. We really, truly appreciate it. And thanks again. I'm sure we'll see you before the year is out. Enjoy the rest of your summer. All right. I'd like to make a motion to go into recess so we can go back to the WebEx to finish off this meeting. May I have a second? Thank you, Board Member Cuttle. All in favor?
Aye.
Ms. Butler, that's unanimous, and we will see you all in a couple minutes back on the WebEx. It's the same WebEx as before, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, for moving me into a
no problem.
as a panelist. I don't know why the link was putting me
As an attendee, yeah, no problem.
WebEx does not like me, Keith. I'm convinced. I mean, look at this picture versus the Google. I mean, come on. It's not nearly as flattering.
This is
I blame WebEx. I think our vote should be that we hold all meetings in Google because we look much better that way. But that's just me.
the picture is certainly clear.
Today, but if I had my say, that would be what we do. Which one has the best look? It makes us look the best. I mean.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Ms. Butler, can you please call the roll? If we cannot hear you, Ms. Butler.
Sorry about that. Board Member Bergen.
Here.
Board Member Cuddle.
Here.
Board Member Manny.
Here.
Board President Joshua.
Here.
Board Member Malaspina.
Here.
Board Member Sabin.
Here.
Board Member Winkfield.
Board Member Wingfield.
She's here. She might just not be hearing us. Oh, she looks frozen. Oh, wait, no.
Board Member Wingfield, can you hear us? Can you hear us? No.
Can we call her here but not hearing us? Is that an option, Ms. Butler?
We'll wait for a minute. Board Member Siders.
Here.
Board Member Wright.
Present.
Okay. Board Member Winkfield. Mr. Bonds, has Board Member Winkfield reached out about any technical problems?
No. I could try to unmute her. Oh, she's gone.
She just left, so I'm thinking she's gonna try to come back in.
Okay, and I apologize about it not being in alphabetical order.
That's okay.
As of now, it appears we have 8 of 9 members.
All right, we will note for the record when Board Member Wingfield rejoins us.
Yes.
Okay, we are now to time for our second public speaks. Again, let me just read this again. Board requests you state your name and town of residence for the record. We must cut you off so it doesn't appear as if you're giving, well, wait, the second public speech does have a time limit, so sorry. The speakers have the full protection of free speech during public speech. However, this forum does not protect you from the subject of your free speech pursuing libel, slander charges. Let me just confirm, is that correct, Ms. Butler, that the second public speech does not have a time limit? I just want to be clear on that before I move.
I do not believe the policy has a time limit.
Okay,
as to
thank you.
Public speaks.
Okay, all right, we'll now move on with our second public speaks. Looking at the audio file, and we have public speaks. Our first audio public speaks is from Scott Sinclair of South Orange. Or Mr. Bonds, can you pull Mr. Sinclair up?
Yes.
And before we go, can Ms. Butler know for the record that Board Member Wingfield has joined us? Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Sinclair.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Go ahead.
Great. Okay, hi, it's Scott Sinclair, 20-year Soma resident and parent of kids in the district since 2008. Look, I appreciate you're trying to work out the problems. I do. You could have just done nothing, but I have to say I'm not super inspired. About 90% of what I just heard I would call platitudes, to be honest. My brain's in kind of a numb place at this point. It's been a lot of bureaucrat speak and not even very convincingly delivered. A couple members contributed nothing but platitudes tonight, or every time they were called on, just said they agreed with everyone else. Hello? That's not what we elected you to do. Please try harder. Please don't just phone it in. A few actually said something that meant something, but I really didn't hear a whole lot that's real. What's going to change? I have two proposals, both of which will sound radical, which won't surprise anyone who's heard me before, but which I believe are rational, justified, and worth listening to. One, it's my view that the South Orange Maplewood School District community should recall every member of this board and require all of you to campaign for your positions in the fall, along with the 5 new candidates who've announced. What we've seen, especially in the emails that we all got to read the other day, thanks to the Village Green, is shameful. It's not acceptable. You all need to justify your value for our continued support and to tell us how you're going to make this district work. There's a mechanism for this, just as there is for the governor of California. Several board members, past and present, have told me that this makes sense and is possible under the rules. Let's be honest, the Board of Ed's been kind of a shit show for a decade, and it's been getting worse. Kamal Zubieta, one
I
of the most
remind you to
serious...
watch your language, sir. This is a public hearing. Thank you.
Okay, but I don't think we're subject to FCC rules, but thank you. Kamal Zubieta, one of the most serious and level-headed members we've had, threw in the towel this year because her mental health had suffered from the bullying she was subjected to by her colleagues on the board. That's insane. We don't elect you to bully each other. There's been a power struggle for a decade between a faction on the board that's campaigned and voted in lockstep on virtually every issue versus those, the so-called independents, what the heck does that mean, who've just been trying to do what's best for the district and our kids. Everyone on the board has the best interests of the district's kids at heart. I believe that. But the dynamic has become so toxic that the members we've put our faith in are literally running for the exits. We can't have that. Something has to change. Soma residents have now had the chance, thanks to the work of the Village Green, to read the emails that shed light on the craziness that led to Kamal's resignation. Board members know that any communication via district email are subject to an Open Records Act request, OPRA, which is exactly what the Village Green was able to accomplish, despite stonewalling by the administration. So, of course, these were extremely circumspect, but you can read between the lines. And from what I've been told for years, Board of Ed meetings regularly devolve into rancorous screaming matches and ad hominem attacks. Tragically, these attacks are often framed in a racial context, which I find really upsetting, but which I guess is not unique in a society that's going through a particularly intense phase right now in regard to that. But which I would want to believe might be or should be or could be different in a community like Soma. Critiques of the new board president's decisions and actions have been attacked as racially motivated. In this community, I find that kind of absurd. And of course, this kind of cheap attack shuts down discussion because pretty much nobody in this community can tolerate being called a racist because we're all trying our best not to be. As President Obama said again and again and again, we're better than this. If every board member's required to compete with every other one this fall, and with the 5 new candidates who've announced, maybe there's a chance to hold you guys accountable and to get our stuff together. My second proposal is that the district find a way for the students/victims of the disastrous excuse for a chorus teacher this past year to have their grades expunged. The administration that hired him owed the kids this. Yes, Dr. Taylor ultimately showed some accountability by not renewing this non-tenured teacher's contract, which was not difficult. But he and others were also responsible for failing to hire a decent qualified candidate for this high-profile job and for letting him run rampant over our kids for the entire school year, sending some of them to therapy and more of half of them to drop out of a program they very much wanted to be part of. Many families have been upset that these kids' GPA was torpedoed by this guy's punitive and unjustified grading, which by his own testimony was often based on kids' enthusiasm for singing publicly on demand in face of his disparagement when they did so. There's an implicit covenant with the teachers, between the teachers and the kids. The kids do their best and accept the consequences, but the teachers also have to perform to professional standards, and they must be reasonable and they must be fair. And the district administration and the supervisors, who we also pay, must be accountable, and they have not been. There's a 9th grade biology teacher who's actually known to be the best teacher in the department in terms of his knowledge and teaching, but whose grading is completely out of whack with any kind of normal, logical standard. Kids in his class have been tested on material that was not covered or that was not taught properly. One test was said to have returned an average class grade of F. Something's wrong here. And what's ultimately wrong is that our school district does not get the concept of accountability. The STEM supervisor for CHS is known for failing to supervise or to hold his teachers to account. In the case of the legendary non-teaching biology teacher, this meant that teaching was just not required. In the case of an 11th grade math teacher, it meant that kids had to deal with expectations for self-instruction on a college level for which they were completely unprepared. New Jersey state law prohibits a district from interfering with teachers' grades. But if there isn't a remedy the district can offer, I encourage parents, anybody who's listening, to band together and demand relief individually, but en masse. My kids didn't take chorus, and our family really isn't hung up on GPAs, but a lot of kids were cheated this past year. Some parents reported that their kids were disqualified from getting into the college or music program they wanted to get into because of their GPA. Justice demands that this is addressed. Our family has one more year in the district, and I plan to hold this institution to account, not so much for my kids who've managed to get by and do well with whatever's been thrown their way, but for the thousands of kids coming up through the system who deserve a decent and consistent education, and at the very least, a fair shake. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sinkler. And that concludes our second public speaks. We'll now move on to new business. Any new business this evening? Yes, Board Member Malaspina.
Hi, yes, I'd like to address the email that was sent to us about the petition to rename the field at Underhill Field. It has garnered over 5,000 signatures, and I'd like to bring that up as something that we look at. I don't know if we have to look at it at FFT or how we go about looking at that, but I feel like it is something that has the support of both the mother, Moose's mother, and also Mr. Perfetta. So it is something that I'd like to bring to the board's attention and see how we can go about possibly looking to change it or to what we need to do to look into it.
Thank you. This seems to be slightly different than, excuse me, than, I'm actually not 100% sure. I do believe it's something similar to what we talked about with Jefferson, but I don't know because of the Underhill family. I don't know if there was anything involved with the donation of the land as to why that is in place. So I think that would at least need to be researched and just the history of the name before we made a decision. But I think in terms of what we need to do, I think that's the first thing we need to do before moving forward. And I don't know exactly how to do that other than work with Dr. Taylor to figure out what how that could be done. Unless Ms. Butler is there anything else that from a legal perspective you can think of that would be germane here?
We would need to see the documents, the agreement, the grant from the original naming to see if there are any conditions which would prevent any change.
So is that saying that we could, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to say, I think, you know, we we can bring it back, with the executive committee can take it to Dr. Taylor to figure out what the most appropriate next step is. And then if it goes through committees, that it will most likely be finance, but it may not be a committee type thing. I'm trying to think of where it would fit neatly. But so we will put it down as an item that we can address.
Great. I just didn't know where exactly who to address the thing to, because I wasn't sure where it.
Yeah, I think generally for those, just bring it to executive committee and we'll figure it out.
Okay,
so-
I'm happy to hear that we're going to look into this, because this is a matter that the community seems to very much want to address.
Thank you. Any other comments on that or other new business this evening? All right, seeing none, closing new business. I'd like to make the following motion. The Board of Education will meet in closed session Monday, August 16th, 6:30 p.m. in the Superintendent's Office, 525 Academy Street in Maplewood, to discuss personnel, legal negotiations, and other matters that will be discussed disclosed at a later date. Immediately following the closed session, the Board of Ed will meet in a public session Monday, August 16th at 7:30 p.m. to using an online video conference platform, as well as, I guess I said, in Academy Street. That meeting will, of course, include hearings of individuals and delegates. The community can view the meeting by following steps, which will be listed on the agenda as well as our website. If there are members of the community who wish to attend in person, please note that masks and social distance are required according with guidance received from the CDC and our local Department of Health. Action will be taken. May I have a second? Thank you, Board Member Saban. All in favor? All right, that appears to be unanimous, Ms. Butler. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting at 8:46 p.m. Thursday, August 5th, 2021. May I have a second? Thank you, Board Member Malaspina. All in favor? All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good night.
You have a good one.
Thank you all. Stay safe.